We're on the trail of a mystery. What does China want in Sri Lanka? There are clues dotted around this verdant country. You just need to know where to look. What we discover what the truth is might well have implications for the global cost of living crisis. Head of MI6 last year accused China of using debt traps to gain leverage over countries. The argument is that when countries cannot repay the loans, they are forced to hand over infrastructure assets to China, assets such as ports, which are useful for China's ability to project its power around the world. Sri Lanka's Hambantota airport was built with Chinese investment. But in 2017, Sri Lanka's already cash-strapped government was forced to sell it to a Chinese state company. So was that the Chinese debt trap springing shut? And can we expect to see more of that kind of thing in now bankrupt Sri Lanka and in other developing countries? Because Sri Lanka is by no means the biggest borrower from China, researchers have estimated Sri Lanka's total debt due to China as around 8% of the size of its national income. But they put the Maldives' debt at 30%, the Republic of the Congo's at 48% and Djibouti's at 68%. That's right. China's ambassador to Sri Lanka agreed to sit down with Newsnight to give Beijing's side of the story position as traveling across Hambantota. It's clearly not just the ports, which has got Chinese investment. We're just arriving at the Mahinda Rajapaksa cricket stadium. Let's have a look. It cost tens of millions of pounds to build but is struggling to recoup its construction costs. Oh, and it's named after the president's brother. We're still in Hambantota, and here's another project. The hospital, also built with Chinese money. This project, too, has been linked to alleged kickbacks to members of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa's family, and let's not forget the international airport and a vast convention center. Chinese investment also extends up northwest to the capital. Colombo Port City is a stretch of reclaimed land on the city's shoreline, intended to be a new special economic zone. It was built with Chinese investment cash and is now around half owned by a Chinese company. But importantly, it's not debt but equity the Chinese own here. The Chinese government is not involved in setting the rules and regulations. So from that standpoint, the government of Sri Lanka is in control, and it's up to the government of Sri Lanka's wish to flavor the development of the city in the way it wants to. It is accurate to say that infrastructure development has boomed under Chinese investment, Chinese depth sometimes, but those are things that we've actually needed for a long, long time. So is the debt trap. Perhaps we were approaching an answer. The truth is that many independent experts say that we should be wary of the Chinese debt trap narrative, and we found quite a lot of evidence here in Sri Lanka, which contradicts it. The Hambantota report, well, that was instigated by the Sri Lankans, not by the Chinese, and it can't currently be used by Chinese military naval vessels. And actually, there's some pretty formidable barriers to that happening. A lot of the projects we've been seeing, well, they feel more like white elephants than they do Chinese global strategic assets. Some say it's possible that what this Chinese lending does is facilitate local corruption more than it does augment Chinese global power. But it's not quite clear whether China would be happy with the haircut, but you can't do this restructuring without China's support. So is that going to be a problem? It is going to be a problem because China needs to agree to a common solution here. They have learned to a lot of countries that currently seems to be in distress. So the president that they set in Sri Lanka, they might have to follow regardless of the debt trap debate. Experts warn of another problem regarding China's overseas loans in Sri Lanka and elsewhere, which complicates potential bailouts. Some have argued that even if there is no debt trap, there's a lack of transparency about Chinese loans to many developing countries. Yet researchers estimate half of China's lending to developing countries is not reported to the World Bank or the IMF. The Sri Lankan Prime Minister recently revealed the existence of $105 million Chinese loan that had not previously been known about. As for that question of whether any Sri Lankan debt restructuring could determine how China treats defaults in many other countries to which it has lent, well, the ambassador pushed back against that suggestion. Does it work? This is not when Sri Lanka. Perhaps the solution to the mystery of what China wants in Sri Lanka is that it doesn't really know it didn't engineer this situation, but is having to deal with it on the hoof. The problem is that Sri Lanka and potentially many other countries caught in the vice of this global crisis need support and debt restructuring. Now, how soon will they get it? That mystery remains to be resolved. Please subscribe the channel further update. Thank you.